Nancy and Richard Lyon live a perfect life.
Very warm and friendly, very caring for each other.
They seem to have lots of friends. They seem to enjoy each other.
In a perfect neighborhood.
The people who lived there believed that they were somewhat insulated from the ugliness of the outside world.
Or so it seems. In reality, nothing can protect them from each other.
I mean, this was a long, ongoing killing. Some very elementary mistakes.
Trying to process that information in my mind, like how on earth could that happen?
Love may be blind and marriage bliss, but divorce is murder. Nancy Dillard and Richard Lyon are going places. This perfect couple meets at Harvard in 1979, where Richard slowly wins the affections of his elegant, well-bred classmate. 3 years later, Richard and Nancy are married and living back in Nancy's hometown, Park Cities, a leafy, well-heeled community in the booming, oil-rich city of Dallas, Texas. As a local journalist, Glenda Vosberg got to know this neighborhood and its affluent occupants.
People refer to the Park Cities as the bubble. The people who lived there believed that they were somewhat insulated from the ugliness of the outside world.
As Nancy and Richard Lyon settle into the Park Cities life, they make a favorable impression on new neighbors and colleagues.
He worked hard and he could be serious, but at the same time he would laugh with you and laugh about things, and he was very good with people, all kinds of people. We got to know Nancy real well, and she was just a sweetheart. I mean, just a really neat lady.
Richard and Nancy are from two very different worlds. Nancy grew up in the toniest neighborhood in all of Texas, a world of debutantes, country clubs, big money, and even bigger egos. Her father, William Dillard, is a successful real estate developer, known around Dallas as Big Daddy, a testament to his influence and financial clout. Richard Lyon, on the other hand, hails from mundane, middle-class Connecticut.
I had the impression that his upbringing was very different. Maybe it was culture shock for him at first. It was a lot different world than I think that he was used to.
Relationship expert Stacy Kaiser and forensic psychologist Brian Russell see the class difference as a crucial element of this marriage.
Nancy was raised really at the top of the hierarchy, and Richard was much more of a simple guy, raised with simple things. And those two things are bound to create problems between them.
I think that in some ways he was probably particularly attractive to her precisely because he seemed to have a little bit looser approach to life. When people are raised differently, they have different expectations about what life will be like as adults and when they're married. And he could feel resentful that he's having all kinds of pressures that he never feels he signed up for.
Despite Nancy's family money, the couple adopt a surprisingly frugal lifestyle.
Very humble, not like a lot of people with old money that were snooty and seemed to be above everybody else. They had a house in Highland Park, but it was a duplex, very simple lifestyle. Richard drove an old '65 Mustang, and it was not a classic car. It was an old beat-up car that the floorboards were all rusted out. He had to put rubber floor mats in there to keep, water and mud from coming up on his suit legs. It was pretty funny, actually.
This couple may be low-key, but their careers are on the up and up. Big Daddy finds them well-paid jobs in real estate.
Richard, frankly, helped me get started. And the first project, one of my biggest concerns was cash flow. And so the first draw I turned in to him, the application for payment, he forgot to process it. And I was most upset. And I went into his office and sat down, and I was quite angry. and he reached in his coat pocket and pulled out a checkbook and wrote me a personal check. And I had never done business with anybody like that stood behind what they said. It really made an impression, a strong impression on me.
After 7 years of marriage, the Lyons have 2 beautiful daughters, doted on by both mother and father. And this being Park Cities, they hire a nanny to look after them, Lynn Pease Woods.
I thought it was a wonderful family to work for. When I first started working for them, I just thought that they were an average family. I didn't really know how much Oriental rugs or antique furniture cost or George Jensen silver. And I realized later that there must be some finances there.
1989. Everything is perfect, at least on the outside. But even for a modern couple like Richard and Nancy, class casts an ever-present shadow.
I think Richard probably did have a hard time feeling accepted. Whether he was being accepted or not, I think feeling like you were accepted if you came from a different background. Being dropped down in the middle of the Park Cities when you're not used to that kind of life can be very intimidating and overwhelming. But it can also be a bit addictive once you get into the lifestyle.
Whether it's the influence of Park Cities or the pressure of work, Lynn finds that Nancy's attitude is starting to change, for the worse.
She always wanted to make sure she got her money's worth from me. She would come home and she would say, "Lynn, what did you do this morning?" And I would go through, well, I made the fruit salad, and she said, well, that shouldn't take that much time.
Perhaps Nancy resents Lynn for her strong emotional bond with their 2 young daughters.
I didn't think she valued me as much as she should because I adored her children so much.
But Lynn finds Richard friendlier and more generous.
He was nice to me. Sometimes very nice, like he would cook me dinner before I got there on a Saturday night to babysit for them while they went out.
There's also some friction within the marriage. Nancy insists that her husband keep up appearances and stay true to the spirit of posh Park Cities.
Every morning she picked out his suit and his tie because she liked him to look a certain way. She liked him to do things a certain way. Like he liked to mow the front yard. And she said, "Richard, you can't do that. We have a yard man to do that." She could be controlling.
Women have this bad habit of wanting to be the fixers. We think that if we try enough things, if we smile enough, if we do what we think is right, we might be able to get the man to change. And I think Nancy lived that way almost every day.
But Richard is becoming increasingly secretive and suspicious.
And we had a housekeeper come for the day, and she had cleaned out her closet. And so I went up, and there was $5,000 in cash on the bed. So I called Nancy. She came home, and she thought that it must have been some money from rental property. She wasn't sure what it was. She asked Richard, where did that money come from? But I think that that was a little bit of concern.
But there are some things that even Nancy cannot control. At a detox center in Tucson, Arizona, her older brother, Bill Jr., is undergoing treatment for alcoholism. The Dillard family, with Richard in tow, pay him a visit. They undergo family therapy sessions in an attempt to help his addiction. Nancy feels compelled to confess some shocking family secrets. In their early teenage years, she and her brother would often engage in sexual play, a relationship bordering on incest. Perhaps these skeletons from Nancy's past were better left buried. Her brother, Bill Jr., may not have appreciated airing their secrets in public, And the admission did nothing to help Nancy and Richard's sex life.
The impression was that her emotional problems affected her relationship. She was a little withdrawn from him, maybe even a little cold sexually, and that maybe that part of their marriage was not up to what Richard wanted.
Even if it's just a case of two kids playing doctor and nurse's children, it could easily affect Richard. You don't want to think about your life partner having had any kind of physical contact like that with a relative.
I think that a supportive husband would have tried to do whatever he could to help his wife do the work that she needed to do in therapy, or do whatever she needed to do to sort of get past that in the marriage, and be patient with her as they tried to restore their normal marriage relations with one another.
Perhaps Nancy's confession has pushed Richard away. Perhaps it's her controlling behavior. Whatever the true reasons, he starts looking outside the marriage for solace.
I was shocked at that.
Nancy found out, and she was very upset.
It all started so well for Nancy and Richard Lyon. Friends and family witnessed the happy marriage firsthand.
They seemed to have lots of friends. They seemed to enjoy each other.
Very warm and friendly, very caring for each other. Richard would pull her chair out for her to sit her down at the dinner table, you know. Very classy. I never saw them raise their voices to each other at all. Very respectful.
I personally wasn't attracted to him at all, but I could see where Nancy would be. I think other women would be attracted to him. He was sensitive and kind.
After Nancy's startling confession that she had been sexually intimate with her brother as a young teenager, Richard seeks the affections of a younger woman. A pretty, smart blonde contractor named Ann Gaisford.
He just didn't strike me as that type at all, and we were working crazy hours. I don't know how he had time to have an affair, frankly. It really surprised me, shocked me, actually.
Ann Gaisford finds a mentor and friend in Richard Lyon, and finally, a lover. A one-night stand turns into a fling, and the fling turns into an affair. But Richard is careless, and Nancy becomes suspicious.
She called Richard once when he was on a business trip to New York, and it wasn't a business trip. He was at a hotel with a mistress, and Nancy found out, and she was very upset. And then she had sweatshirts delivered, 2 sweatshirts with Harvard on them. They weren't meant to be delivered to the house because Richard had ordered them for him and his mistress.
As the torrid affair intensifies, Richard makes no real attempt to keep it a secret.
I think it was devastating for Nancy that Richard was so open about the affair. She comes from a family where image is important. And here, not only is her husband cheating on her, but he's talking about it.
Yeah, it would be horrible, at least if the spouse is trying to hide the infidelity. One could delude oneself into thinking that part of the reason is to try to spare them the hurt involved. But when the person is being open about it, there's an intentional infliction of harm involved in that.
After 6 months of this humiliation, Nancy has had enough. She orders Richard to get out. Soon after Christmas 1989, Richard packs his bags and leaves his wife and 2 daughters.
I left her crying every day. She was very sad about it. She wanted her marriage to work.
As winter turns into spring, Nancy is left alone to deal with a new problem at their Shenandoah Avenue home. Apparently, there's an infestation of fire ants, a common pest in Texas, even in the posh suburbs of Park Cities. Nancy turns to Richard and asks for help. Perhaps the fire ants are simply an excuse to bring Richard back into the family home. If so, it doesn't work. As her husband openly continues the affair, his behavior becomes increasingly excessive. Richard is spending uncontrollably on cars, expensive restaurants, and gifts for Anne, including a $5,000 Cartier ring.
He was buying expensive jewelry, and she knew she wasn't getting any of it. And so that was a warning sign to her. And she confronted him about those things. She was very upset.
As the marriage moves from one crisis to the next, Nancy's health starts to suffer. She's pale and drawn and suffers from unexplained bouts of nausea.
I thought that she was very thin. Other people were concerned about that.
The pressure on Nancy is made worse by her involvement in a lawsuit with her former boss at Trammell Crow. She found evidence that he was misusing company funds and may be called to testify in this bitter legal dispute. Another stress that's starting to weigh her down. Nancy decides to deal with the thing that is making her most unhappy, her marriage. Nancy writes to her husband, telling him that enough is enough. The letter reads, "Over the last year, I have been willing to forgive and overlook your indifference, cruelty, and destructive criticism." Nancy asks for a clean break. Richard grants her wishes and files for divorce. Nancy requests sole custody of the children in addition to child support from Richard. At this point, Richard seems willing to accept the terms. Nancy also removes Richard as a beneficiary of her life insurance policy. Instead, she leaves the money to her 2 young daughters.
She didn't want Richard to get it because he was out of the house, and she thought he was going to divorce her, and she definitely wanted the children to benefit from it.
As the divorce proceedings get underway, there's an unmistakable sign that Richard is unwilling to let the marriage die. Nancy receives an unexpected gift, a gift that she assumes is from her husband.
She brought it in, there was a note to a very beautiful woman that I think so much of, or something like that. And so I was like, oh, Nancy, this is so nice. But she was a little dubious about it.
These small gestures of reconciliation seem to be working. Nancy and Richard even go on dates together. Nancy seems determined to repair the damage and start over.
She didn't want to be a divorced woman. I think she was very success-oriented. And she wanted to live up to what her father would have expected of her, which would have been success in a marriage.
I think Nancy is reluctant to end this marriage for a couple of reasons. First of all, she's invested a lot of time and energy in molding this man into the kind of man she wanted. And so to give up on that would be a defeat. I also think that she comes from a family where image is important and people tend to stay married. So she wants to keep that image up and she wants to keep the marriage going.
While Nancy pours her energies into reconciliation with Richard, his presence does not seem to help her health, which continues to fail.
So I went and took good care of the children for the weekend, and they went skiing. And they came home, and I said, "Did you have a nice time?" And Nancy said, "I was sick the whole time." Apparently, she was vomiting the whole time of the ski trip. No, she did not have a nice time.
Still, as the year draws to a close, the prospects for saving this marriage grow brighter. Richard instructs his attorney to halt the divorce proceedings. He also promises to end the affair, lying to Anne that Nancy is suffering from a rare blood disease. That Christmas, Richard and Nancy even take a family vacation together. But 3 weeks later, the real reason for Nancy's sickness will be revealed.
She was writhing in pain.
I never could have imagined that that was Nancy.
Nancy Lyon has endured her husband's infidelity, but is determined to make her marriage work. By January 1991, just as the marriage seems to be getting back on track, the unexplained nausea that has been plaguing her for months becomes impossible to endure. As her pain becomes severe, Richard rushes his wife to the hospital. A family friend, Gary Perkins, finds him in a state of shock.
He seemed very distraught, very upset, very worried about what was going on. Did not seem himself at all.
Dr. Ali Bagheri, then a resident at the Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas, is the first doctor to see Nancy.
I first examined her. I was in the emergency room that morning when I came on, and she was a lot of distress, and she was very sick. She was in a lot of pain, and she was having a lot of nausea, vomiting.
The symptoms are typical of a severe stomach flu. But Dr. Bagheri believes she's suffering from something more serious.
She was writhing in pain, and she kept asking, please help me, please help me. And she had a lot of abnormalities in her electrolytes, and she also, her liver enzymes were very, very sky high, very elevated.
Dr. Bagheri orders a battery of tests, suspecting Nancy has ingested something toxic.
I came out of her room, and her husband, Richard, arrived, and I talked to him outside the room. He introduced himself. And then I told him we had also sent some additional tests. And I said, well, this is the checking for heavy metals, including like lead, mercury, and the minute I say arsenic, his pupils dilated. I mean, I was looking right in his face, and look on his face, he goes, what makes you think about the heavy metals and arsenic and so on? Why are you checking for those things? I said, well, nothing. I'm just checking those for the sake of completeness.
Nancy's father, William Dillard, seeks out Dr. Bagheri with what he believes is some vital information.
So he pulled me to the side. He goes, well, I didn't know if you knew this, but Nancy and Richard, they've been having some rough times in their marriage and marital problems, and they've actually been separated recently.
Dillard tells the doctor about the bottle of wine given to Nancy 4 months earlier, which he believes made her sick.
She took the bottle in and she drank some of that wine. And she later on became very ill, and she was throwing up. She had some nausea, vomiting, so on.
Suddenly, an unexplained illness may be turning into something far more sinister.
Her condition was not getting better, and she was seen by multiple consultants. They were all seeing her, and everybody was puzzled.
Lynn, the family nanny, is shocked when she sees Nancy's condition.
I saw her, and I never could have imagined that that was Nancy. She was so bloated, and she was so sick, and it was very sad.
By the next day, Nancy's organs begin to shut down. She sinks into a coma.
Her condition had deteriorated, and they had to put her on an artificial life support and mechanical ventilation to maintain her oxygen level elevated.
At this point, Richard and the Dillard family have a very tough decision to make, whether to take her off life support.
My intern approached me, came to me and said, hey, everybody have decided to withdraw care on Nancy, and her husband came to me and they have discussed it all, and that was their decision.
Something's not right. Dr. Bagheri decides to ask whether Nancy's parents agree with the decision.
And I understand you all had made the decision to stop life support and turning off all the medications. And he said, no, who told you that? He had no knowledge of this. By then, I knew there was something, I had a very high level of suspicion, and I knew there was something fishy going on.
Richard's request raises an immediate red flag for Dr. Bagari. He decides to alert the authorities of his suspicions.
So I called the medical examiner's office, and I told him, listen, I have a patient here, and she's critically ill, and I suspect foul play.
The family disagreement becomes moot as Nancy suffers total organ failure. Within a few hours, her heart stops and she dies.
I was actually there at the hospital with Richard when she passed away and drove him home from the hospital. And it was a very sad day. It really upset me, and I was more shocked than anything. I just couldn't believe someone as healthy as she was and beautiful could pass away that quick. He was very distraught, very upset, didn't talk much.
The news of Nancy's death shocks the residents of the Park Cities neighborhood and quickly becomes the subject of rumors and gossip. Some of those rumors hint that Nancy Dillard Lyon did not die of natural causes.
I couldn't believe who would have poisoned her.
Will a startling deathbed revelation lead to a killer? Nancy Lyon, long-suffering wife, doting mother, and adored daughter of a high-profile Dallas family, is dead. The official cause of death is declared to be septic shock, but the doctors and her parents suspect foul play and order an autopsy. Meanwhile, Nancy's husband Richard starts the process of tying up her financial affairs.
I said, well, Richard, if you're gonna look into the life insurance policy, don't be surprised if it's been changed. And he said Nancy would never do that without discussing it with me.
In fact, Nancy did change the policy. Their 2 children will now receive all the money.
I think he wanted the money. Wouldn't anybody prefer $1 million to nothing?
News of the doctor's suspicions have now reached the ears of the Dallas Police Department. Detectives pay Dr. Bagari a visit.
They asked me everything from the beginning till the end, what had happened.
And what Dr. Bagari has to say will shock investigators. He recounts the last conversation they had before Nancy slipped into a coma. She told him that she'd taken unmarked pills given to her by Richard.
She said, well, he has been giving me this capsules, and he said, these are vitamins, these are good for you.
She also tells Dr. Bagari about an outing to the movies. Richard bought her a soda with something suspicious floating on top.
It was dark in the theater, and then she said she took a sip out of it, and she said it tasted awful. And she looked in the cup, and then there was a powder, and it was like a powdered aspirin.
Finally, the test results come back. The heavy metal screen confirms the worst. Nancy has been poisoned with arsenic.
Her urine arsenic level was sky high, very elevated. So, I mean, it was arsenic poisoning. And then you put all the piece of puzzle together, the labs, everything else is all fit.
Arsenic kills slowly and painfully. At first, there are headaches, vomiting, and diarrhea. Then convulsions and cramp. Lungs, kidneys, and the liver start to fail. With high doses, coma and death are inevitable. Nancy Lyon dies from a poison that used to be called inheritance powder.
The medical examiner, they called it the cause of death was acute on chronic arsenic poisoning. They had found arsenic in all her organs, including her liver, her spleen, her lungs, her hair, nails, every organ in her body.
The autopsy proves that the poison was ingested over many months. Her death, if it proves to be murder, amounts to a long and deliberate act of homicide. The case becomes a criminal investigation, and the police focus on the most obvious suspect. 4 months after Nancy's death, Richard Lyon is charged with first-degree murder. Friends and neighbors are stunned.
I couldn't believe who would have poisoned her. I didn't assume it was Richard. I didn't know how she got poisoned.
I was shocked, and then trying to process that information in my mind, like how on earth could that happen? Or I couldn't believe that they had arrested him. You know, it really upset me, like what on earth is going on? I just couldn't understand that at all.
Arsenic is kind of a really terrifying way to murder someone. It was a high-profile family, so it was everyone knew the people involved.
They just seemed like a loving married couple to me. And I wouldn't have thought that in loving parents. I couldn't imagine this ever happening.
I thought he was innocent, you know, just based on his character and the way he conducted himself around me. And he was a very stand-up guy.
We knew, we were convinced that he did it. I wasn't convinced I could prove it. Richard was our only suspect really we ever had. We knew it was going to be circumstantial, and it was going to be difficult because of the personalities and the notoriety.
What's more, Sims has no direct proof that Richard administered the poison.
Well, originally, we looked really hard to try to put arsenic or poisons in his hand where he would have obtained it, evidence to prove that he had access to it.
Prosecutor Sims turns to the Lyons' friends, family, and colleagues, exploring motive and opportunity.
You had to understand Nancy, I thought, before you could understand how this happened. And I finally understood. I learned enough from her friends and family. I finally understood her.
She suspects Richard wanted to keep the family connections without the inconvenience of staying married.
He did not want to move outside of the Dillard circle and lose the acceptance in what came with being known as a Dillard. He wanted the children. He wanted to be part of the Dillard clan. And he wanted to be a Dillard, and he wasn't going to be if she divorced him. He didn't just not want to be married to Nancy anymore. I think he kind of despised her. And he wanted her gone.
But those who know the family are convinced of Richard's innocence.
I think he came across as a loving father, very loving father, really loved his daughters. And it's difficult to understand how a loving father could just decide to kill their mother.
Richard's defense lawyer, Rob Guthrie, quickly dispels the notion that this will be an easy ride for the prosecution. Guthrie claims that the trial will be nothing short of a Perry Mason whodunit. He has not just one alternative suspect, he has 4. The judge, John Crusoe, is unsurprised by Guthrie's showboating tactics.
It's not unusual, I think, a lawyer of that caliber and a case of that magnitude to make those kinds of statements, because it will be going to trial, and whatever they say, it will be publicized. Get some expectations that this isn't some lay-down case, that the state's going to come in and roll over this guy, but there are other suspects out there, and it's lots of intrigue and all that.
And when the trial begins, it causes a sensation.
You couldn't go to a party or a gathering or a school or community event in the Park Cities without hearing about the trial and the story. You couldn't. Everyone was talking about it.
The trial has been underway barely a few hours when Guthrie introduces his first suspect, Nancy's brother, Bill Jr. The Dillard dirty laundry is hung out in full view of Dallas society. Under cross-examination, Nancy's father admits that incest between Nancy and Bill Jr. took place, but dismisses it as 2 kids playing doctor.
Defense attorney goes up and he hands the father a stack of paper that I'd never seen before, the father had never seen before, and asked him to identify it. And he said, well, is that Nancy's handwriting? And he said, yes, it was. And then they start reading off the paper. And I'm kind of at that point a little helpless because I'm not sure what all it says.
The papers are pages from Nancy's handwritten notebook. The note suggests that Nancy was terrified that her brother wanted revenge after she revealed their incestuous past. It reads, "Fear of reprisal, fear of Bill and what his desires are, sex, sick sex, incestuous with me, my girls." It makes Bill Jr. a possible suspect in the murder of his sister.
So I had to just sit there and just act like I knew what was happening and everything was fine. And I'd seen enough of her handwriting to know it did look like hers. And I thought, there's got to be some way either to disprove some of this stuff or he's not guilty and we got the wrong guy sitting here.
I do think it's possible that Nancy's brother harbored anger towards her. She humiliated him in the family. And over time, he may have grown angry. However, I do not believe that his anger would have resulted in a long-term poisoning.
Yeah, it would have been a rage killing if it were the brother, in my opinion. One single violent incident.
If that's not enough for the bewildered jury, Richard's attorney introduces a second possible suspect. Nancy's former boss, David Bagwell, has been sued by the company for misappropriating over $700,000. Nancy was a potential witness against him, and because of that, it seemed she was a target. Richard's defense lawyer produces a letter written to Nancy, which contains a terrifying threat. It reads, "Stay out of the Bagwell case, or you and your family will face the wrath of God."
Nancy had been scheduled to testify against him, and he had a brother that was a doctor that worked at the hospital where Nancy died, and so the theory was there that they killed her because they were angry at her, and that was the most I ever understood about that.
In order for a person to poison another person in the way that Nancy was, they'd need to have access. And so it's hard for me to imagine that a former business associate would have the kind of access needed to make her as sick as she became.
A third suspect did have access to Nancy, the nanny, Lynn Pease Woods. Richard's lawyer claims she has an obsessive attachment to the two girls and wanted them for herself.
Other people said, well, I know Bill Dillard Jr., and I know Richard, and I know neither of them would have killed Nancy. It must have been the nanny. Richard wanted to make it look like I wanted to kill Nancy and have the children at my house.
Lynn protests that she never wanted the two girls for herself.
I had no intentions of having them live with me. I just liked for them to come and stay. I surely wouldn't murder. I didn't have any criminal history, or it wasn't in my lifestyle or anything. It just was bizarre.
The nanny couldn't have been a sweeter, nicer person. And not that you can't be fooled, but we spent hours talking to her. She loved the kids. She would have never, she loved Nancy.
This trifecta of murder suspects doesn't do much to deflect attention from Richard. But a fourth suspect is about to tip the case on its head.
She was taking the arsenic to make herself sick in order to get him to come home.
Richard Lyon stands accused of the murder of his wife, Nancy. A murder committed slowly and painfully over months with small doses of arsenic. But Richard's lawyer, Dan Guthrie, believes he's got evidence that will absolve his client. He says he will prove that Nancy took her own life. And to prove it, he revisits the fire ant infestation at the family home on Shenandoah Avenue. The defense calls a witness who claims it was Nancy who paid a visit to the chemical company, asking about ant poison. That witness is company owner Charles Couch.
She inquired about ant killers. I said, we're not in that business. And I said, to buy the chemicals you want, you got to have a license, you know. Tell she was a smart woman, you know. When you're talking about chemical formulation stuff, you can go over people's head real fast, but she seemed to grasp a lot of what I was trying to tell her.
The defense even produces a receipt, which shows in black and white that Nancy, not Richard, had ordered massive quantities of arsenic trioxide, enough to kill the entire neighborhood. And according to the nanny, there was no fire ant problem at Shenandoah Avenue.
The children played out there every day. We went out there to the garden every day. There were no fire ants in the house or in the backyard.
Guthrie argues that there's only one reason why Nancy ordered arsenic. She wanted to take her own life. Under great pressure at work and at home, was this a cry for help or a genuine suicide attempt? And in her deathbed confession, did she deliberately try and frame her husband for her own murder?
You know, my job, in our line of work, anything's possible. I mean, people do the damnedest things all the time.
An expert psychiatrist, James Grigson, testifies for the defense. He says Nancy took the poison in order to bring Richard back home and save the marriage, a ploy that went horribly wrong.
He took the stand and testified that he believed that she'd killed herself. And we were floored. I mean, it was outlandish. And so we kind of sit there with our mouths, our jaws dropped. It was just outrageous that would even be. And then when I asked him on cross, I said, well, how did you come to this conclusion? Did you know her? No. Did you ever meet her? No. Have you talked to her family? I went down a long list of, have you talked to these people? No. I asked him if he had ever met the defendant. No. And I said, well, Dr. Grigson, where do you get it? Where does this come from that she killed herself? From reading the newspaper, the facts in the newspaper.
I don't think that's possible at all. First of all, when women tend to want to kill themselves, they try to do it as painlessly as possible, typically with sleeping pills, something they're not going to feel. And this experience that she went through was extraordinarily painful and traumatic.
Now, there is such a thing as factitious disorder, where somebody doesn't want to kill themselves, but they want to make themselves sick for the attention that they'll gain. But when someone does that, they don't tend to actually do something that's horrendously painful, like poisoning oneself with arsenic. They tend to just fake the symptoms. There's no need to actively actually create the symptoms.
Lynn is convinced Nancy was not suicidal.
She cried all the time when I was working for her at the end. So I went and said, Nancy, are you considering suicide? And she said, heck no. She said, I have a lot of problems in my life, but that's not one of them.
The theory was that if she were sick, that Richard would come home. He would come home to take care of Nancy and come home to take care of the children. Arsenic seemed a bit extreme. If you were going to make yourself sick, there are a lot of other ways to do it. But that was the theory.
The defense appears to have the advantage, but a key witness is about to change the course of this trial. Charles Couch, the chemical company owner, is supposed to confirm to the court that the receipt for arsenic, signed by Nancy, is genuine. Much to the surprise of Richard's attorney, Couch takes a good look and says the receipt is a fake.
Well, it looked like it had been photoshopped, you know. Somebody had typed neatly, you know, and everything, and somebody came by and said, oh, we'll doctor this up, you know. It was kind of funny, you know.
He said, I did not sell that arsenic. Those are not my receipts. And I recall his statement was that I have a beautiful handwriting and I like my handwriting, or something to that effect. And so I write all my own receipts by hand. And this is a typed receipt. this is a fake.
And once doubt is cast on one crucial piece of evidence, Richard's house of cards begins to topple. The incest note implicating Nancy's brother is also shown to be a forgery, and the suspicion surrounding Bill Jr. is entirely lifted.
He went back and added in the incest part in his handwriting, but to look like Nancy's, to get that in front of the jury.
As the trial went on, I started having doubts. I was there a couple of different times to listen to the trial and the way things were being conducted. And that's when I started questioning, what's going on here, and this certainly doesn't look good.
Whatever momentum they might have built, it was taken out from under them because it looked like what they put on was just a lie. And at that point, it's probably difficult for a jury to believe the defendant or the lawyer.
Indisputable evidence is mounting against Richard Lyon. The prosecution shows that Richard amassed a smorgasbord of potential poisons. Nancy's vitamin pills are analyzed and found to contain barium carbonate, a compound used in rat poison. Analysis of prescription drug capsules found in her bathroom cabinet reveals the presence of cyanide. There is also a paper trail. Richard used his own name to order the poisons and paid with personal checks.
The first thing most people do would be to, you wipe your fingerprints off things, you clean up your tracks when you leave. I mean, this was a long, ongoing killing, and he made some very elementary mistakes.
There were a lot of circumstantial evidence, but when you tally it up, it was pretty devastating.
For somebody who is as intelligent as Richard, he was sloppy. He left a paper trail that ultimately led to his conviction. One of the things that we know about psychopaths is that they aren't necessarily intelligent. What they are is emotionally intelligent. They're really good at reading people and manipulating situations, but that doesn't mean that they're good at crossing their T's and dotting their I's when it comes to actually trying to kill someone.
Well, I think that many people were fooled by Richard for a long time. So every time you hear a story of a murder or a shooting and the person's neighbor says, "Oh, he was such a nice guy, I'm so surprised," really all that shows is just how little they knew the person. It doesn't show that a really nice, wonderful person snapped.
Despite moments of doubt and paranoia, Nancy did nothing to prevent her own murder.
I think she couldn't really believe it herself, and if she told people, they would think that she was crazy. Just kind of an inability to accept it because it was so far out. I don't think most people really expect a loved one or someone that they've loved and had children with, or a family member to hurt them. And so I think that part of her believed it, part of her down in her knew it, and part of her didn't want to believe it, and part of her just said, "I'm not going to believe it."
In the beginning of the trial, I was not convinced that he had killed Nancy. And I still am not sure that they proved it in trial. I think at the end of it, I came to the conclusion that, yeah, I guess he probably did it, but I'm not sure that the prosecution truly proved that he did it.
The jury needs no more convincing. After a 3-week trial, they find Richard Lyon guilty of first-degree murder. Richard is the only person in the courtroom who appears to be surprised.
There's all kinds of murders. People die in different ways. Arsenic is something that you have to plan to do. You have to acquire it. You have to get the guts up to deliver it. And you have to figure out a delivery method. And you have to do all those things, and then it works a little by little by little. So you have to be committed to keep doing it. To me, that's just as personal as a stabbing or strangulation. And in this case, you're watching your wife, the mother of your children, slowly die, and you just keep giving doses and doses and doses until you accomplish your goal. To poison somebody over a period of time like that, that's pretty dastardly as far as I'm concerned. And I didn't really see any option other than the maximum sentence. That's what I thought was appropriate, and that's what I assessed.
To the relief of the Dillard family, Richard Lyon is sentenced to life. Nancy's brother, Bill Jr., is granted custody of the Lyons' 2 daughters. Richard continues to protest his innocence.
He just never seemed like that kind of person at all. I can't even fathom how that could happen. It still is just unbelievable to me.
Oh, I was sad. I was sad when they arrested him. I was sad when he was convicted, because that was the end of what I had thought as a very wonderful, loving family.
Tracy and Pauletta Burleson are prominent members of their community.
They seemed to be in love with each other. I felt like my sister found someone that she loved and she could trust.
They run one of the oldest churches in Houston.
When you see them at church, they just look like they just really loved each other.
But before long, they will fall from grace.
They lied to the members.
They weren't in it to help people. They were in it to get the check.
A taste for money that will lead to the deadliest sin of all.
It seemed that everyone that knew Pauletta wanted her dead.
Love may be blind and marriage bliss, but divorce is murder. It's July of 1995. Family and friends are gathered to celebrate the wedding of Tracy Bernard Burleson and Pauletta Ross. Pauletta's sister, Joyce Bingham, is a bridesmaid.
She wore a beautiful dress. It wasn't white, of course. He had on a suit. It was really nice. It was nice.
Their love story begins a year earlier in the 5th Ward at the First New Mount Calvary Baptist Church. This church is one of the oldest in the 5th Ward, a section of Houston settled by African Americans after the Civil War.
Here in Houston and in the 5th Ward, in the South in general, churches play a big part in people's lives. It's a place where people gather, where they make their friends, where a lot of people make lifelong relationships. It's sort of the center or social hub of a lot of people's lives here.
Members of this congregation remember the atmosphere fondly.
When you go to First New Mount Calvary, you felt special, even if you didn't know nobody. You were one of us.
The preaching was good, the singing was good, everything was good, so I just really liked about it.
It wasn't just for the members, it was for the neighborhood. And that's what makes it a good place.
Tracy Burleson grows up in the church and dreams of one day becoming pastor. Pinky Johnson has been a member for nearly 50 years. She recalls Tracy as a boy.
I was a matron at the church and worked with the young children. And Tracy, he was in the choir and he played the drums and he just did good things.
Religion is a big part of Pauletta Ross's life as well. After her second divorce, she starts visiting First New Mount Calvary looking for emotional support. Her sister Joyce is already a member of the congregation.
I invited her to the church because I wanted to make sure she was all right, you know.
At the time, Tracy is just out of a relationship. He is 28 and she is 40. Despite their age difference, sparks fly almost immediately. Psychotherapist Stacy Kaiser and forensic psychologist Brian Russell think Tracy and Pauletta's feelings were in line with their common interests.
He's younger, he's charismatic, he's engaging, and it's a little bit of a lift for a woman to think, wow, I got this young guy who's up and coming and something that I'm interested in, which is the church.
She was admiring his aspirations to be a pastor in the church, and that felt good to him, that she believed in him and he could achieve that and everything.
I think that Tracy wanted someone who would look up to him, and Pauletta looked up to him.
Less than a year after they meet, Tracy and Pauletta are married.
They seemed to be in love with each other. I felt like my sister finally found someone that she loved and she could trust.
Both Pauletta and Tracy have children from previous unions. But Pauletta's kids are now grown, and Tracy's 12-year-old son, William, lives with his mother. The new couple decides to take in foster children and start a brand new family.
I'm the one that talked her into it because I was telling her so many kids need help. You know, it's so many children that's looking for love, you know, and I felt like she had the love that she could give them.
The family moves into a nice home in a good neighborhood and settle into their lives together.
When you see them at church, they just look like they just really loved each other.
But to Tracy, one person is still missing in this perfect family portrait. His biological son, William, has sickle cell anemia, a rare blood disease that causes severe chronic pain and requires constant medical attention. Now that he's settled, Tracy is able to obtain legal custody of William. For the first few years of their marriage, Pauletta keeps her job working at a hospice, caring for the elderly. While Tracy works assisting different pastors around Houston.
They just serve God, you know. They believe in serving God. They believe in doing some of the things, the right things that God wanted them to do.
But Tracy's wishes to run a congregation haven't quite panned out.
You stay a little while, you move somewhere else.
Then, 12 years after his wedding, Tracy finally gets his dream job. In July of 2007, he is made pastor of the church where he and Pauletta met, the First New Mount Calvary Baptist Church. But he gets the job not because of what he knows, but who he knows. Members are getting ready to vote from a list of possible candidates when two deacons force them to choose Tracy. One of the deacons is his stepfather.
Tracy's dad and this other deacon brought Tracy in on a Sunday morning and put him in the pulpit and said he was the pastor. And that's when things started happening, just because it didn't happen the way it should have.
The deacons say they want someone they know in the pulpit. They had too many problems with pastors in the past. Church members feel betrayed.
They lied to the members. Why was we told we was going to vote, and the time to vote, we couldn't vote. We didn't vote. The answer was, you don't like the way we do it, go somewhere else. The members didn't take that kindly at all.
Churchgoers like Gerderine Nobles hear Tracy has a bad record with the other churches he worked for.
He had been to like 5 or 6, and each one of them he got kicked out of because the most of the pastors said that when he got over there, he tried to take over their church. And that's why he got kicked out of a lot of churches.
Within days of his appointment, the new pastor targets the members who aren't donating money to the church.
He started writing letters to some of the members, telling them they were no longer members.
Tracy also overhauls different departments to his liking.
He went from the way that we have been doing things to the way that he wanted to do things. He told the musician or something, if he couldn't play what he wanted him to play the way he wanted to play it, he needed to get off the piano. I mean, he wouldn't try to work it out with you. That's just the way he was.
Nobody wanted Tracy at that church. And when I say nobody, nobody.
Pauletta doesn't make many friends either.
She didn't go out and say hello to people, which is unusual for a pastor's wife. A pastor's wife is sort of the social director of a church, right?
She was just like her husband, cocky. Everything had to be done her way.
If the atmosphere weren't strained enough, a year later, Hurricane Ike tears through Houston, damaging the little church. But there's an even bigger storm brewing inside the congregation.
None of the members saw any of the money. I mean, none of them.
Pastor Tracy Burleson and his wife Pauletta run the first new Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Houston's 5th Ward. The little church is damaged when Hurricane Ike tears through town in 2008. But the firestorm brewing among their members is about to make Ike pale in comparison. The first Sunday after the hurricane, congregation members are in need of comfort and guidance. Tracy proudly announces that New Mount Calvary qualifies for aid from a federal agency. The pastor promises the money will go toward fixing the run-down old building.
They got the grant or whatever you call it, and they got in front of the congregation telling us what they're going to do with the money and all this stuff. But none of the members saw any of the money.
In the following weeks, as the congregation waits for the grant money to come in, the word spreads that the couple's life at home is far from the nice Christian image they project in public. Stories also surface that only 3 years prior, the Burlesons were charged with abusing one of their foster children using an extension cord and a wooden board.
They weren't in it to help people. They weren't in it to help kids. They were in it to get the check. There was a lot of abuse, and it seemed like a pretty terrible home.
Tracy and Paulette had a ragged relationship, and I've heard rumors that she was more dominant than he was, and they even heard rumors that she would whoop him, she would beat him.
Pauletta is also hard on Tracy's son, William. She mocks him for having sickle cell anemia and subjects him to punishments that verge on torture.
At one time, because he had done something that she didn't like, she had made him go out onto the driveway and kneel down without long pants on piles of rice under his knees to the point where he felt like he was going to pass out from the pain of that.
William eventually finds comfort in a friend named Tyone Palmer. She works at the hospital where William goes when he's sick. After a while, she becomes a kind of caregiver to him, and he even brings her around to his father's church. By 2009, the rocky home life with Pauletta prompts William to move out of his father's house and in with Tyone's family.
Tyone took him in. She allowed him to live with her. He helped take care of her children. So William looked at her almost like a mother figure.
Tyone offers William an escape from a dysfunctional household. She offers him mothering and nurturing and caretaking that he's not used to.
William's fragile, and I think he decides to live with Tyone because it's like a respite. It's a place where he feels safe and loved and cared about.
I think that Tyone put herself in a position to exercise profound influence over William. I think that a kid to whom she gave what she gave him in terms of filling the void in his life would probably be willing to do just about anything she asked to maintain her good graces.
Meanwhile, at the church, a movement to oust Tracy is gaining momentum amongst the parishioners. One of the allegations against the pastor is of particular interest to his wife.
The allegation was that he was having girlfriends at the church.
Pauletta is not pleased.
Oh, she verbally talked to him, told him, you know, that if he didn't stop this or he didn't stop that, but he always managed to sneak around to do whatever he wanted to do.
Behind closed doors, Pauletta begs Tracy to quit cheating on her. But in public, she chooses to stand together with her husband.
I think Pauletta stayed with Tracy Burleson because she too enjoyed the power that they had together and being the pastor's wife and kind of being a pillar in their society. And she probably also loved Tracy to an extent.
They used each other. They saw advantages to being with each other for one reason or the other. And the fact that they had coupled up and were in it for themselves together seemed to work for them.
At the church, the long-awaited grant money never emerges. Members suspect that the Burlesons are using it to fund a whole new lifestyle.
Things started looking a little bit brighter for certain people at the church that held position. I mean, the wardrobe looked different, the vehicles looked different, and you know, that stands out. I mean,
The members can't forgive or forget.
all they wanted was just a fair chance to voice their opinion, and they never were given that a chance under Tracy. Never did. Never were.
Anytime the members ask to see the church's financial statements, they get the same answer. They don't exist.
Our finance reports are whatever I tell you, that's your finance report. They don't show you, they tell you. And you accept it or you don't accept it. For us, you know, they look at it.
But the unified front Tracy and Pauletta present to the public is about to crumble. Tired of his cheating ways, Pauletta leaves Tracy. Rumor has it she catches him with one of his mistresses in bed.
There's no way in the world that I would have went to a man's house and bickered with his wife. You don't go there at that place that they reside in.
This time, Pauletta packs her bags and leaves.
She was just tired. She was just tired of putting up with the foolishness, and he would date 2 or 3 different people.
I think Paulette left to try and bring him back to her and to tell him that he couldn't wander with these other women, that he needed to be home and he needed to be with her, because it didn't make her look good.
Back at the new Mount Calvary Church, Pauletta carries on with her facade of devoted pastor's wife.
In order for Pauletta to maintain her status as the pastor's wife, she had to help Tracy maintain his status as the pastor.
Here we have Pauletta, who is trying to do everything she can to make Tracy change. She yells at him, she threatens to leave him, and at the end of the day, none of that's going to matter because he is getting too much benefit out of being exactly the way he is. And the more a person can get away with doing bad things, the more likely they are to keep doing them.
But it's about to get worse. In April of 2010, Pauletta catches Tracy in another affair.
They had a meeting at church, and she had left to go pick up her prescription. Well, she said she was gonna go on home, but she didn't go back home. She went to the church, and lo and behold, he was having sex with this special girl.
Tracy is having sex in the church with a member who is mentally challenged.
She told him up and her up, and she told her office up.
When Pauletta calls the deacons to denounce her husband's behavior, it adds fuel to the ongoing effort to get rid of Tracy. The news spreads like wildfire among parishioners.
One of the deacons called and told me about what had happened. I was shocked. I was like most members, I was really shocked.
The fact that Tracy would be in the church and get caught having sexual relations with a person with a cognitive disability says a lot about his character. Having sex with a person with a disability is not only immoral, but it's about needing a sense of power and control.
The fact that he's doing it in the church indicates a profound disrespect for the institution that he claims to represent and believe in. We've seen this behavior from an alarming number of prominent pastors over the years, where they have these positions that give them access to others' adulation, others' affection, others' money. And if they are decent people who are in it for the right reasons, then they will use all of those things to try to improve the lives of others. If they're sociopaths, then they'll use all of those things to try to improve their own lives. And it certainly seems like Tracy falls into the latter category.
The pressure builds on Tracy to quit, or at least acknowledge what he's done. When the pastor stands before the congregation only a few days after the blowout, many members expect some kind of apology. They are given none. But in a strange twist, the congregation learns that Pauletta just moved back into the family home with Tracy.
To be truthful, at that point, my respect level dropped tremendously.
Led by some of the deacons, a group of members decide to file a civil lawsuit to dismiss Tracy.
In March, Paulette Burleson caught him having sex inside the church.
But in the following days, with Tracy's back against the wall, the congregation members wake up to some horrible news.
First New Mount Calvary Baptist Church mysteriously burned to the ground.
I was at home, and my younger brother lives about 3 blocks from the church. So he called and said, hey, Charles. I said, what, man? He said, do you know your church is on fire? My church is on fire. I said, yeah.
Church members are devastated. Some of them openly accuse Tracy and Pauletta of arson, citing that the motive was to destroy evidence of where the grant money had gone.
By this point in Tracy's life, the facade that he has created has started to fragment, if not begin to fall apart. And so a person who's built their life upon a facade, when that starts to happen, will do almost anything to try to hold it together. Because if it does completely fall apart, then they'll feel as if there's nothing left to live for anyway. So it's almost as if they've got nothing left to lose, and they'll go to amazing extremes like arson and even beyond to try to keep that facade intact.
Let's not forget that Tracy has already gotten away with a lot of things he's done wrong. So of course he would think to himself, if I burn down the church, I'll get away with that too.
I think it was a cover-up. They did that to cover up all the stuff that they were doing that was not right at that church. And I'm still upset about it, that they would do something like that.
It was such a terrible feeling. I can't explain how I felt, because the church had been there so long, and I said, if you don't want something, you just leave, you know, to destroy God's house. Just leave, you know, if nobody wants you.
Let the church say amen again. Amen. I'm gonna wait till the train pass by, that we'll be able to hear.
But the next Sunday, in spite of an ongoing arson investigation, Tracy and Pauletta hold a service right outside the church.
And I'm gonna keep my eyes on God. Now I'm keeping, because guess what? I can't do nothing without God.
Still traumatized by the fire, only a handful of parishioners shows up. But a local news crew is there, and Pauletta again takes the opportunity to play the part of the dedicated pastor's wife.
We take our focus off God. Believe me, world, we have nothing.
Let the church say amen again.
But in a matter of days, a bullet will blow the congregation apart.
It was just horrible to lose a life and to lose where you worship at. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, somebody got to stop it.
One of the things that they found on the keys was blood, fresh blood.
A suspicious fire has destroyed the first New Mount Calvary church, and an arson investigation is underway. Members suspect that Pastor Tracy Burleson and his wife helped set the fire in order to destroy evidence of theft. But just days after the church burns to the ground, its problems are overshadowed by an even greater tragedy.
Somebody shot my wife. Can somebody say 911, please?
On May 18th, 2010, a 911 call originating from the Burlesons' home is dispatched to police in Houston. Lead investigator Wayne Kuhlman is among the first police officers to arrive at the scene.
When we arrived out there, there was a female, a black female, laying face down in the driveway of the residence. Appeared to be bleeding from the head profusely.
Pauletta Burleson has been shot. The bullet pierced her head and neck, killing her instantly. Tracy is frantic. His car, parked further down in the driveway, the engine still running, the driver's door open, and the headlights still on.
We decided that the person that could walk us through what had happened the best, who had last seen her alive, was Tracy Burleson, her husband.
If I rolled in her car.
In this videotaped statement shot right at the crime scene, Tracy gives his deposition to police.
Came outside, we were talking and everything. And I told her, I said, Paulette, I'm finna go down to the store. I said, I'm finna go down, and she said, okay. All I know, when I came back, she was just slumped over in the chair.
Tracy says his wife was still breathing when he found her. He realized she was dead only after he made the 911 call.
I came right out there and called 911 because I told you I was trying to holler for somebody to help me. I'm supposed to be a man of God. Right. You know, I don't know, that's hate, man. That's hate. To shoot, you know, to do something like that. That's hate. I have to be a man of God, man. I have to be a man of God. Of course, I say that I have to forgive them, man, but that's hard.
The news burns through the neighborhood.
I got there, and all of this tape was out there. She was laying on that ground. They wouldn't let me see her.
It was just horrible to lose a life and to lose where you worship at. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, somebody got to stop it.
Tracy tells the police he's not that surprised that his wife got shot.
It seemed that everyone that knew Pauletta, according to Tracy, with the exclusion of her biological children, wanted her dead.
My wife kept a .38 pistol in her car.
Tracy reveals that his wife had recently got herself a gun for protection, and that she'd been receiving threatening phone calls at the church from a mystery man.
Somebody, they called and was threatening us. She told me that they said, that ain't y'all church, and we're gonna kill y'all for taking our what was that, their grandfather church. That's what they said. And y'all, we want your ass.
Interviewing the neighbors, the police also learned that Tracy's infidelities gave Pauletta many rivals. One of them mentions a mysterious woman who has been spotted around the house lately.
What we started to learn was this was not your model Ozzie and Harriet family, that there was a lot of controversy in the marriage, not just between Pauletta Burleson and Tracy Burleson, but in their professional life where he was a pastor of the church.
The detectives are still investigating the crime scene when William, the pastor's son, shows up.
He came over, and one of the things that happened was he locked eyes with his father. It wasn't a look of compassion or a look of concern. It was more of just a serious 1,000-yard blank stare.
Sergeant Kuhlman interviews William and notices he's acting a bit strange. William says his friend Tyone Palmer picked him up from a friend's and dropped him off at the crime scene. To corroborate William's statement, the investigators tracked Tyone down.
Tyone lives in the neighborhood. She has William Fuller living with her. If there was something going on, she might or might not know who this person was in the neighborhood that the affair involved.
Tyone tells police she doesn't know anything, adding that she barely knows the pastor and his wife.
She didn't know much about Tracy, and there was no relationship, and her whole concern was with William.
Meanwhile, Kuhlman dispatches one of his men to look into Tracy's alibi. The pastors claim that he found his wife's body after picking up a snack at the corner store simply doesn't check out.
When the crime scene investigator drove from the store, we were able to determine that the store would have been closed at the time that Mr. Burleson claimed to have gone to the store and made purchases.
Back at the crime scene, the absence of any food or drink in Tracy's car also seems to contradict his deposition.
Mr. Burleson had claimed that upon returning home, he drove in the driveway, just got out of his car, went to her, started trying to see if she was okay, started making phone calls, trying to get help, and that he never got back inside his vehicle.
Once you actually saw how he reacted and the story that he told about how he got chips and he got something else to drink, and then the police saying that there's absolutely nothing in the car indicating he had any of that, it just didn't make sense.
But what police actually do find in the car are Tracy's car keys with fresh blood on them. The pastor suddenly appears like the most obvious suspect, but police don't have enough evidence to pin him down. Pauletta's funeral is a few days later. Hunter and Kuhlman show up to observe.
We went over there in the hopes of locating witnesses who may have some information, whether they were people that were named by Tracy Burleson or just people that walked up to us.
The detectives are certain the pastor is somehow responsible for his wife's death, and they just can't believe he's there preaching.
When I saw Tracy up there singing songs and just praising God and telling everyone to move on, that Pauletta would want them to, I was incensed. I was offended, if you will, almost.
Tracy has no concern for other people, but what he is a great showman. He has charisma, and he is doing his ultimate performance at the funeral.
It's another opportunity for him to play the martyr. As painful as this is for me personally, I'm standing up here today because I know what a loss it is for all of you, and I want to be here as your pastor to ease the burden of this on all of you.
At the end of the service, mourners are invited to say a few words in memory of Pauletta. Sergeant Kuhlman gets up and vows to catch the killer He also makes it very clear who he thinks did it.
And then he turned on the pulpit and looked at Tracy and said that we're gonna get our man.
I want y'all to know we will do everything that we can to get to the person that took Pauletta.
Amen. To me, that was a big thing.
The whole congregation stands up and applauds Kuhlman, and he gets a standing ovation. And I think everyone in the congregation knew that Tracy had something to do with Pauletta's murder.
But police will soon learn that nothing is what it appears to be in this case, including the identity of the killer.
Fact is, she fooled both of us.
He wasn't nothing but the devil from hell, just on earth, here on earth.
Pauletta Burleson is found shot dead in the driveway of her home in Houston. Detectives suspect her husband, controversial pastor Tracy Burleson, is the murderer. Their homicide case is about to be blown wide open when a Crime Stoppers tip directs their attention towards someone else in the Burleson family. According to the caller, Tracy hired his son to kill Pauletta.
Someone called in and told the police that William Fuller had been offered some of the insurance proceeds, money that the life insurance would pay out on Paulette, that he would be given some of the money so that he could go to school or buy a car or something along those lines.
William's interaction with his father on the night of the murder suddenly seems more significant to Sergeant Kuhlman.
The strange look and his stoic walk through the scene of her murder and the eye contact that he made with his father, all of that started to make more sense.
The focus of Kuhlman's investigation now becomes trying to track down the friend to whom William allegedly confessed.
To find the friend that's alluded to by the Crime Stopper tipster it was paramount.
About a week into their search, detectives catch a major break. They identify and contact William's friend, who agrees to help them. They ask the friend to speak with William. Only this time, they'll record the phone conversation in the hopes he'll confess again. And he does.
He was just pouring his heart out.
According to William, his father never went to the store. He stayed at the crime scene to help William carry out a plan Tracy had concocted himself.
Tracy was going to get into an argument with Pauletta. During the argument, William was going to come from behind and shoot Pauletta.
William's story matches up with the evidence observed at the crime scene.
It corroborated the fact that she was shot in the back of the head while seated in a lawn chair sitting in her driveway. And it just gave a great explanation of all the dynamics and everything.
The rest of William's story also gives an explanation of how Pauletta's blood could have ended up on the pastor's car keys.
After she was killed and he had moved her body, he got in his car, got the door open and staged that part of the scene to corroborate his story that he had left, drove back home, pulled in the driveway to find his wife shot.
While there's still no hard evidence that Tracy is the mastermind behind the murder, William's confession points to a third accomplice. His caregiver, Tyone Palmer. In her first statement to police, Tyone said she barely knew William's parents. But according to William, Tyone teamed up with his father to convince him to kill Pauletta, going as far as providing him with the murder weapon and a plan to dispose of it.
William was going to call Tyrone Palmer, who was going to come and pick him up and drive him across town to Tyrone Palmer's cousin's house, where William would be able to clean up, change clothes, and establish an alibi, so to speak.
William says Tyrone put the gun in a bag while he got ready. They tossed the gun in the bayou and doubled back to the Burlesons. William tells investigators that Tyrone helped plan the murder and get rid of the gun, but she denies everything. Tyrone later explains to prosecutors that while she helped her fragile, unpredictable friend get rid of the gun, she didn't find out about the murder until after it was done.
When he got in the car, she knew that there was something wrong. He was agitated, he was sweating, he was jittery, and she continued to ask him, you know, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong, and he wouldn't respond until finally he said, Pauletta's dead.
Kuhlman and Hunter are shocked when they learn Tyrone lied to them. And it's not the only thing she's been lying about. On June 8th, when police have enough information to issue arrest warrants against them, they find the pastor in bed with Tyrone.
If I had to grade Tyrone Palmer on her ability to lie, she would be in like the top 3 of the best liars I ever met in my life.
Actually, that's sort of a joke Sergeant Kuhlman and I have between each other, because he says that she fooled me, but the fact is she fooled both of us.
But William has more surprises in store.
We learned from William that he also slept with Tyrone.
William Fuller claims his father and his caregiver pressured him to murder his stepmother, Pauletta Burleson. But why would caregiver Tyrone Palmer have anything to do with the victim? She told police she barely knew William's parents. After seeing Tyrone's arrest on the news, one of her colleagues at the hospital contacts police with startling information. She's seen the threesome before in a photo in Tyrone's locker.
Tyrone began telling her coworker about some of the details of her relationship with Tracy and the fact that he was her fiance and they were going to get married at a particular time.
In fact, Tracy had a secret relationship with Tyrone ever since William had brought her to church one Sunday.
There was a photograph that showed Ty and Tracy as the mother and father figures.
If you didn't know anything about the parties, you would look at that picture and think, well, that's a real nice looking family.
It was this happy family that existed sort of in a netherworld. So the fact that they all were smiling for the camera is a little surreal to me.
It must have been surreal to Pauletta as well. After all, she was the pastor's wife, desperately trying to cope with her husband's numerous mistresses. Among them, Tyrone Palmer. Tyrone's attorney, Anthony Osso, says Tracy manipulated his client into believing his marriage with Pauletta was headed to divorce.
A man tells you, I love you, I want to marry you, my marriage is not working out, my divorce papers are going to be signed anytime now, it's almost final, she's moved out of the house. Is that unusual to believe that? Well, she was unsuspecting, she had no reason to doubt him.
But in reality, Pauletta was still playing the part of pastor's wife and fiercely supported her husband's struggle to keep his position in the church.
Tracy was on thin ice. He was basically on probation at the church.
Despite, what was going on behind the scenes in his life, that's not how he portrayed himself to my client.
But after Tracy's last sexual misconduct in the church, Pauletta decided she had had enough and seemed ready to hang Tracy out to dry.
Tracy had no other source of income. Everything that he did was through that church. That was his position of power.
Police learn that during the same period, Tyone texted her colleague from the hospital, saying she was desperately looking for a gun.
She showed us text messages between Tyone and herself, asking her to get a gun for her. She would get a reply, what kind of gun? Tyone, I don't care, whatever will get the job done.
This new evidence reinforces William's story that Tyone provided him with the gun to kill Pauletta. But Tyone's defense attorney, Anthony Osso, argues William is no better than his father, an erratic liar whose contempt for Pauletta drove him to take her life.
He would kill her regardless of whether Tyone Palmer ever entered his life. This was not a pre-planned act. It had been brewing, building up, and he was capable of snapping at any time.
William certainly had reasons to hate Pauletta. As a teenager, he'd chosen to leave home because she mistreated him. But why would he now involve Tyone, the Good Samaritan who had gone out of her way to care for him?
She had given him shelter from Paulette and had given him a place to live and had made him part of her family.
But the truth is far stranger. In fact, William did not see Tyone as a mother figure. Not anymore.
We learned that William, and it came as a very shock to us, that he also slept with Tyone.
William loved Tyone so much, he even had a tattoo of her lips on his neck.
He wanted a reminder of their sexual relationship, that no matter where he was or what he was doing, every time he looked in the mirror or past a window, he would see this reflection of Ty's lips on his neck.
I think that William is in love with Tyone, but I don't know if he's in love with her as a woman or more of a mother figure. What I see with him is that he wants to be close to her. He wants to please her. He wants to make her happy at whatever cost.
It wouldn't be the first time that a young person conflated maternal love and sexual love. Freud talked about it with the whole Oedipus complex.
As the case moves to court, prosecutors are now dealing with a clear-cut love triangle.
Dad over here, son over here. What a shocker.
Tyone's attorney says William preyed on Tyone's feelings to get her to sleep with him by telling her his father never loved her.
A lot of people will look at this and say she should have never slept with him. I think she was so vulnerable, she didn't know what to believe anymore.
But when confronted with Tyone's version of events on the witness stand, William explodes.
We actually watched William be drug out of court in a chokehold in front of the jurors.
Tracy also contradicts his son's testimony, denying that he hired William to kill Pauletta.
There should have been something, whether it's a canceled check or a watch or, a gift certificate or something for killing Paulette, but there was just nothing other than William's own word.
Tracy's attorney, Lane Lindsay, presents the jury with an interesting theory. Not only did William want Pauletta dead, he wanted his father to take the blame for her murder. With Tracy behind bars, William could have Tyone to himself.
Here's this woman who has this close friendship with him, and then to have his dad, Tracy, develop a sexual relationship with that person, I think probably really deeply hurt William.
But William denies these allegations and testifies that his father had been asking him to kill Pauletta for months. It was only when Tyone entered the picture that he finally agreed to do it.
Now that Tyone was asking, this woman who'd shown such kindness to him and taken him in and given him the home he never had, when she asked him, that's when he ultimately went ahead with the plan.
The power of love and sex is often stronger than the power of force. Tyone had a level of sway over William that went beyond what Tracy had, and that it was probably born of positive feelings, feelings of love, perhaps fake feelings of love that she set up in him in order to manipulate him.
I don't see her that way. I think that Tracy was a puppet master and Tyone was his puppet. Being that he doesn't really have true emotions for people, it wouldn't have bothered him if Tyone slept with his son. And so I think it's completely possible that he told her to lure his son in physically and sexually and then reward him with sex after he killed his stepmother.
Tracy had more than one motive for wanting Pauletta dead. After his last sexual misconduct, Tracy suspected that Pauletta was ready to betray him and collaborate with those who wanted him out. Tracy also stood to collect on Pauletta's life insurance policy. And most importantly, Tracy feared that Pauletta could reveal to arson investigators that the pastor himself set fire to the church to destroy financial records and any evidence of what really happened to the grant money.
We learned that William had learned from his father that he and Pauletta Burleson had been involved with the fire at the church. When the church burned down, all of those records went with it. It was gone. It was just a total loss.
By the end, it's clear all three parties are guilty. Tyone Palmer gets 10 years for tampering with evidence and 7 years for murder. William Fuller gets 20 years for murder. And Tracy Burleson gets a life sentence without parole for capital murder. He is appealing his conviction.
Tracy will probably never get what he deserves. He got a life sentence. I mean, look what his wife got.
I really think they should have given him the death penalty. He needs to rest. And he needs to let the other people rest.
He wasn't nothing but the devil from hell, on earth, here on earth, walking, breathing, God's good air. You know, he was just the devil.
You know, if I had anything to ask Tracy, I would ask him, you know, is this, why would you put your son involved in something like this? I mean, go get somebody else.
The First New Mount Calvary Baptist Church is still in tatters. Arson investigators could never determine what caused the fire. The members are confident they will one day rebuild and worship there, as they did before Tracy Burleson ever became their pastor.
That church was a big part of their history. It was a big part of their lives. And they lost all that behind this individual and his actions and his activities. I hope that they're able to pick everything up and move on.